Welcome to Boulevard's Big Three, where we break down this week's sermon with questions from you, me, and John. Today we're continuing our Allegiance series with Daniel 9. Such an easy chapter.
Yes, it's so easy.
Nothing but softballs.
That's
the last
right.
couple of weeks.
That's right.
Hey, guys, if you have a question about the sermon, you can use the QR code that you see on the screen. And right now, it is my job to summarize the sermon.
Let's see what you got, man.
I always am scared I can't pull this off, and then you always make it easy for me. Okay, here we go. God is always up to something bigger than we think he is.
Yes.
Because he reigns, we can now rest, and we need to find our bigger in Jesus.
Woo! That's really good.
That's good,
That's
man.
so good.
Yes.
I wish
that's
I'd
good.
have preached it. That's
Yeah,
awfully
man.
good. All right.
So
Well,
good.
you got it written down. You can remember it.
All right,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
That was good.
That was my elevator version of his sermon.
Yeah.
All right, now let's dive into the big three. Abby, what do you got this week?
All right, so the first thing I wrote down was, so we saw Daniel at the beginning. He was reading Jeremiah's prophecy. So
Yeah.
Jeremiah, who predated Daniel,
Yeah.
who prophesied about the captivity that was coming, right?
Sure.
And he prophesied about Jerusalem's 70-year desolation.
Yeah.
You know, and I think other places it talks about, somewhere I feel like I read, where it says 70 years was when the land rested. Because we
Okay.
see different things about like the year Jubilee and all those things. So it's
Sure.
like the land rest. That was rules that God gave them in other times too. Okay, so my question is, what was happening in the land during those 70 years? We knew what was happening in Babylon/Persia.
Sure.
What was happening in Israel and Jerusalem and all that?
So the only answer I can come up with is this that isn't too complicated and that makes sense. Nothing good.
Yeah.
Nothing good. It wasn't paradise.
Okay.
Destroyed. It was in ruins. You know, that's their land. The vibrancy of the people is not there. So, you know, when you take away the vibrancy of the people and you take away the temple and you take away what is normal and comfortable and family life, you have a land that is in ruins. Even if it doesn't physically look like it, that is what is happening in the land.
You know, you look at that throughout history, if God is not somewhere, in this case 70 years.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the Soviet Union. You look at examples throughout history. I mean, we do terrible things when God is not at the center
Right.
of the
True.
life of a nation.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Underline
Because
that a
people
couple
were left
times.
behind.
There
like
were
the,
people-
the
yeah.
youngest, maybe, and the oldest, and maybe people who were frail to make that journey.
Right.
They took the best of the best.
Right. Not everyone left, but everyone is in exile.
Yeah.
You know,
Right,
everyone
yeah.
is in
Even if
exile.
they're still there,
Even if they're still
physically
there,
there, yeah.
everyone's in exile.
They're mourning for
That's
all
right.
those years.
That's right.
Okay, the second thing I wrote down was, you said pray in full confidence that God hears us,
Yeah.
and I think it was interesting seeing Daniel was so overwhelmed by when he read that, and it was like, I don't know, maybe was he asking like, is the 70 years over? Is God really going to do this? You know, he was so overwhelmed by that moment.
Yeah.
And then I love that's when Gabriel came, when he
Yeah.
was so weary. But my question is, what do you say to people who feel like, I've been praying for this, I've been praying for my husband to come to church with me for decades, I've been praying for my kids to turn back to God for decades, I don't feel like God's listening. What do we say to them?
Well, let's just take it back to Daniel for a moment. Daniel is in his 80s at the point in time that we read Daniel 9, and he's praying the prayer. Now, do we think that that's the first time he started asking God, for that? He was likely prompted by the 70-year situation. But I would not imagine that that's the first time Daniel started
Right.
praying. And
He's
he's
had
praying a
some
prayer
low
of forgiveness,
points. Yeah.
I would imagine, of course I don't know, but I would imagine Daniel has been praying a prayer similar to this over the course of this 70-year period of time. So I would tell a person who's on the verge of giving up, keep on praying. Don't get weary in your prayers. God answers in a number of different ways. God answers with a yes, and that yes might be a swift yes, or it might be a slow one. He answers with a no. It might be a swift no. It might be a slow no. Most often God says wait, I think, and so we wait. And we continue to pray, and we wait. Jesus says for us to continue to keep on asking, keep on knocking, keep on seeking. And so to a person who's tired and weary, you keep on praying.
And I would just encourage you, pray that God would give you the eyes to see what he's doing while
good.
you're waiting.
That's
Because
good.
based on, the summary that you gave us, God's always up to something.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get so fixated on the thing that we think God needs to be doing right now.
Right.
We miss out on the 100 things that he is doing.
Amen.
Absolutely.
That's
That's
good,
what
John.
I mean. Like, this is a very simple example, but when my son Ezra was younger, and he would say before we go to bed, we're praying, he'd say, "Will you pray it won't rain tomorrow so I can play my soccer game?" I say, "Yeah, we'll pray that." And then it rains, and he says, "What's the deal?" And I said, "Well, buddy, there was somebody else praying for rain."
Yeah, that's
And so
right.
God is seeing this giant picture, and it's like that. You hear that story about the ant on the rug, this beautiful, Oriental rug or whatever, and the ant only sees its little part of the pattern. It's like, what is going on here? But God can see the whole
That's right.
thing
That's
from the
good.
top.
Yep.
And so anyway, because we have to be careful how we talk to our kids about prayer, because
right.
always with that idea in mind that someday they're going to ask really hard questions. They're going to be ready for it.
Yeah.
And then the third thing I wrote down was, I thought this was so good. You said perfection isn't a condition for answered prayer, but persistence might be.
Yeah.
And so I have this question, and I think about this sometimes. So what is the biblical precedence for like a prayer chain for we need to get as many people as possible, pray about this. We've got to get everybody in here.
Yeah.
Almost like if we could get one more person,
Then it would go over the top.
we'll beat the world's record, and
Yeah.
then God will listen.
Yeah.
Does it feel that way sometimes with big things like that?
Yeah, yeah, and I honor that. I honor the fact that let's get a whole bunch of people together. I mean, this is what we did today. With Power Up Sunday, we got a bunch of people to go pray over this place and this place and this place. And it wasn't just one person. There were many. We read that the prayers of the righteous avail much, and we often think the righteous is, plural, more than one. It may be in Greek, it might be plural, that might be what he's getting at. But the onus shouldn't be put on the idea of many people together. Okay, it's not so much about that. It's people praying in faith, in full confidence. So whether it's one or whether it's many, those prayers are coming up before God. So is it a requirement to do big things that 100 people pray? No, it's not a requirement, but it is 100 people acting in faith. And so there is something special about 100 people acting in faith, coming to God with unity and with a singular intent.
Well, and God's timing is perfect, and you said it today. God answers our prayers in ways that bring him glory.
That's right.
Because that's just how it works.
Yeah.
And him receiving glory is how the universe is intended to work, and it's good for all of us. And so maybe it's not so much the number of people or the persistence. Maybe it's about the time that God says, now I get the glory in this.
That's right.
Maybe something
That's
like that.
exactly
Because you think about all those stories in Jesus' ministry where, like when he waited to heal or to raise Lazarus, where he says, "I'm doing this so that more people will believe."
Yeah.
And so it's like the more people we get in on it, it's like you're saying, it's more for them than it is for God to act.
Yeah, that's
Because
right.
he's not like a democracy. He's
Right.
not like the more votes get
That's
it.
right.
That's
That's exactly right.
Jesus could have just prayed any prayer he wanted to, and Lazarus would have been healed, whether he's even there or not. But in 3 days, God got a lot of glory because of the way it
That's right.
unfolded. So there you
Amen.
go.
That's good.
Absolutely. Well, that was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot of stuff. If you have any more questions about allegiance and the book of Daniel, be sure to send those to us. You can use the QR code on the screen.
And if you want to rewatch this sermon, and you should, or maybe you want to watch it for the first time, and you should, you can find it at boulevard.to/sermons. Well, guys, that wraps up this week's Big Three. Look for this podcast on your favorite platforms, and be sure to join us next week for Boulevard's Big Three.
Until then, don't be afraid to ask big questions. He's a big God, and he's got big answers.
Amen.